In summer of 2019, my two sons and I packed up everything we own. We moved to Winston-Salem. We didn't know one person, and there were lots of things about moving here and living here that surprised us. Some of those were great surprises, some not so good. We're going to talk about some of those in this video, and if you need help buying or selling real estate, my contact information is on screen and in the description below. But the first thing that really surprised us when we moved here is the overall cost of living. Now, you might be looking at Winston-Salem for that exact reason. You see a lot of affordable housing when compared to the national average, and yes, that's one of the things that drew us here, but I'm also talking about the everyday items. Our electric bill's much cheaper. Gas for the cars is much cheaper. Insurance is cheaper. Getting your driver's license is cheaper, and on and on and on. There are so many little places that you can save some money that really helps drive down the cost of living overall here. And when I help clients, especially if they're moving from somewhere like Florida or out west, especially on like homeowners insurance and auto insurance, there can be some huge savings there. I get a little bit of mixed reviews on property taxes. They're much less than I was paying in Illinois, far, far less actually. To me, they're very reasonable. I know they're higher in some states and lower in some other states, but property taxes and things like that can also, I find, save most clients money as well. One odd thing, while renewing your license here is very inexpensive, it's a few dollars a year. Your car is considered personal property and you do pay property tax on that every year. So that is an unexpected bill. I found that it kind of evens out what I paid for a registration when I lived in Illinois, but overall, the cost of living has been a huge savings here and a great surprise. Next thing that surprised us when we moved to Winston-Salem was the quality of the food scene, and for me, the quality of the drink scene in Winston-Salem as well. I really didn't expect so many local gems to be here when we first moved here. I heard of the big things that you see online, the Carolina barbecue and being the home of Krispy Kreme. And side note, I'm not the biggest fan of Carolina barbecue. It's just not my favorite thing with the vinegar-based sauce, but you should definitely try it if you're coming down here. A lot of people love it. But then you have things like the Moravian cookies and things like that that make the Winston-Salem food scene really special, but also just the restaurants and bars and wineries in general. There's everything. It runs a big gamut for a city of its size. Everything from just your hole-in-the-wall taco shop to a little bit more fine dining restaurant. There's a decent amount of ethnic food. I will say that Winston-Salem is getting better in that regard over the last few years. It's not the best, but there is a decent variety of different ethnicities represented in the food scene here. And there are some really, really good food trucks here and chef pop-ups where they do some really creative dishes. So overall, that was just a great surprise for me. Next thing that surprised us when we moved here is the overall pace and quality of life. Now, we had visited a couple times before we moved here, so we knew it was a little bit slower. The people were friendly and things like that, but I was surprised at the overall pace of life. It is a little bit slower from the suburbs of Chicago where we moved from. That did take some getting used to. Sometimes, people are just being friendly and chatting and you gotta kind of remember to slow down. That took me a little bit of adjustment, but it's nice. People open the door for you at the grocery or let you in traffic or smile and wave and will have a little conversation with you. It's been a refreshing change. When you combine the fact that you have Southern hospitality and then about half the people are people that came here from somewhere else and trying to start their, new life and live in a new city, it just makes for a nice mix and melting pot of a wide variety of people and just overall for us, better quality of life. The next thing that surprised us when we moved here, I knew when I got here I was going to sell real estate, so I knew what my job was going to be. I sold it in Chicago. I've been doing it since 2014, but the job scene and economic scene in Winston-Salem is very strong and it's thriving. You have the really large employers, like Reynolds America or Atrium Health. Wake Forest Baptist Hospital is a huge employer in just healthcare in general. But then you also have a lot of companies that are coming here. We made whole videos about the companies that are relocating or expanding to the Winston-Salem area. Everything in the aerospace industry that's coming to support already large business here like Collins Aerospace. And you have a lot of manufacturing jobs coming here as well, hundreds and hundreds of jobs. And then on the high-tech side of things, you have, Innovation Corridor is one of the largest places in the country for life sciences development. So everything from blue-collar jobs to white-collar jobs, the overall economy and job scene here was a really pleasant surprise. Now, the thing I do wish I had is I wish could just land, one big solid employer that would bring a mass amount of jobs. Some of that's coming to Greensboro and the surrounding areas. I think as those kind of mature, especially in the aerospace industry, that will bring more high quality employers here with better paying jobs, which should be good for everybody. Next thing that was a surprise when we moved here, especially as I got into my career in real estate, was just the huge variety of neighborhoods that are here. Now, I tend to live in the suburbs and I like easy access to the city. I just like being a little bit outside the main part of the city, but I still like going downtown and things like that. But within, 15, 20 minutes of downtown, you have just about any type of living situation that you could want. Whether it's downtown lofts or on the outskirts of the city, or even 20 minutes out or 30 minutes out, you're being more rural, and just a huge variety of housing all within that, whether you want to be in, gated communities or new construction neighborhood, or, ranches that have a lot of land, whatever you're kind of into just about, there's a huge variety of housing here. It's been a huge surprise because we can almost find, once people find the area that they want to be in, we can almost always find a house that fits. Next thing that surprised us when we moved to Winston-Salem, and this has some good and bad to it, but that is the weather. When I was talking to my kids about moving here, the one request that they had is they still wanted to have 4 seasons, and they did not want to go somewhere where it was hot all the time. I was with them. I did want to get away from Chicago winters, and Winston-Salem has delivered on that for the most part. You do have 4 real seasons here. Winters are mild. The summers, yes, it does get hot and it does get muggy. The good news on that is, there's about a 4-week period. Those last 2 weeks of July and the first 2 weeks of August, generally, those are the hottest. It does get muggy, it does get humid, and it's not very comfortable. We have some summer thunderstorms that can get pretty nasty sometimes. But overall, I do think the summer is not too bad here. I will say around, September or something, you're like, okay, I'm ready for it to cool off. And my biggest gripe about the weather in Winston-Salem is sometimes the winter just drags on further than I would like it to. I will say the last few years with that have not been too bad, but I really like, if winter could just end at February and then we can go right to spring, I would appreciate that so much. But in Winston-Salem, sometimes that winter season can drag out a little further. Even in winter, most days will warm up into the 50s, so it's not too bad. But again, I would just like a more clear-cut line for winter to end. Next thing that surprised me when we moved to Winston-Salem was just the sheer amount of activities that are here. And almost whatever you want, indoor, outdoor, and everything in between. There are, especially for a city and suburbs of its size, there's a ton of things to do. Whether you like urban spaces like, Bailey Park right downtown, or the grounds that is just being constructed just outside of downtown will be a beautiful urban space. Or you want to visit some of the 79 city maintained parks, or walk the 25 miles of greenway that the city has. There are lots of outdoor activities right in town to do, or if you want to shop, you could do that at Thruway Center. If you want to go just outside of town a little bit, and you're more outdoorsy, there's Pilot Mountain, Hanging Rock Park, some really great places to hike or mountain bike. You can kayak on the Yadkin River just west of the city, about 20 minutes or so. And it's nice, you can hit all of these sometimes in just one day. It's because it's so accessible and easy to get around here, it really makes it easy to do a lot of things. There's a website called the Go To Winston-Salem. They do great events pages for just things going on around the city and suburbs as well. You'll always find something to do here just about all year round, plenty of stuff to do. That was a great surprise for me, and it's much different and better than just kind of the suburban flatland kind of where we moved from. Next thing that surprised me, and I've talked about this a few times, but the community itself and the culture behind it was a pleasant surprise when we moved to Winston-Salem. Just walking downtown when we were first visiting here, we noticed the art scene, and while I'm not a artophile or whatever that word is, I do appreciate some art. The city is just full of it, galleries everywhere, beautiful murals. You have multiple different art schools and performance theaters. So that part of the community is great, but the culture that is within that, again, like I said, with the Southern hospitality, about half the people that are here from somewhere else, it just makes for a really interesting overall culture in the city. There is something special about mixing, Southern charm and modern growth with people from a little bit of everywhere coming together. It is a pretty unique thing. Next thing that surprised us when we moved to Winston-Salem were the schools and the overall family life vibe. I came here with my 2 sons. That was important to us. It was a pleasant surprise. I've been really happy with the school system overall here. Now, if you're watching the news about Winston-Salem Forsyth County schools right now, there are some terrible things going on with some mismanagement of the budget, and they're having to do some crazy measures to try to get out of that hole that they dug themselves in. So that's not a great surprise. How it got that way in the first place is a mystery to me when people were supposed to be managing these things. So this has not been a good surprise, but the quality of education that my kids got, and when I talk to clients that have their kids here, overall that's been a pleasant surprise to me. The South can kind of have that stereotype of just slow and not really on top of things, or just too laid back about things like that. There's some really good education standards here. And like I said, I've been really surprised and happy with the quality of educations that my kids kids got here. You know, you also have a lot of private schools, magnet schools, charter schools, and they have school choice here as well. So outside of the public school system, there are a lot of other options for you as well. But then the sports and extracurriculars that go along with that, you know, whether it's movies in the park or a lacrosse team that's outside of, you know, the school system, or just the quality of the YMCA's here. There have just been a lot of surprises that make the overall, you know, school and family life much better than I thought. Next thing that surprised us when we moved here is, and I'll have a quick story about this, but is the traffic and the roads out here in Winston-Salem and the surrounding area. Now, I knew that traffic was going to be better than Chicago. Obviously, you know, it's a smaller city and things like that. But the road work that they do here gets done at an incredibly fast pace. Where I moved from, and I've heard this from other clients as well, it's like a roadway project. Once it gets started, it's, you know, 4, 5, 6 years down the road before it's even complete. This is the total opposite. When I was first moving here, they were redoing all of 421, a major stretch of highway that they tore up, expanded, widened, and they got that done in just about a year, the entire thing start to finish. And yes, on the traffic side, there are some places that will get choked up at certain times of day. If you're down on Louisville-Clemens Road or Stratford Road on rush hour, you know, the streets are a little bit, you know, narrow in some spots, or there's just a lot of people coming through here, or Haynes Mall Boulevard during the holidays. So yes, there are some spots with some traffic here and there, and the infrastructure needs to be improved in certain spots, but they do a great job at this for the most part. If you've come from any sizable city before, you're going to find the traffic here is much better than probably where you came from. And you'll learn the nuances about pickup and drop off times for school and getting around, you know, the area during Christmas time when the crowds are out. You'll learn all that stuff. It's not a big deal as some people make. If you need help buying or selling real estate in Winston-Salem or the surrounding area, if you have any other questions about what it might be like to move here, I'd love to be a resource for you. You can reach out to me directly at jeff@govalentino.com. Thanks.